Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. Right now, you're looking at a door. The door is on the other side. That door is an average door, but where it leads is not so average. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, but I like doing the Twilight Zone voice. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions for April 23rd, 2016. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson. I hope everybody is having a wonderful day, and now I'm going into the dusty roads just because I can. I hope everybody's having a wonderful week because the last couple of weeks, or the last couple of days, have not been all that great for the Drac, I must tell you. So I hope everybody else is having a wonderful time. I know that earlier on this morning, one of our, or actually not one, three of our panelists did have a good time, supposedly.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead. So I hope everybody's had a good week. I am very happy to have you guys on here, especially given the last couple of days. But I am not alone. I am being joined by my panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow critics, fellow geeks, and all of the above. First of all, let's go ahead and introduce Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, a.k.a. Romney's Reviews, or I want to say Studio Phantasma now, but I don't have to anymore, of Romney's Reviews of From the Shelf, and also of the recent Geek News bonus review of Ratchet & Clank. Romney, how are you?
Pretty good. I mean, it was literally such short notice that we got these passes for the 10 a.m. screening of Ratchet & Clank. We didn't have to sign any embargoes, which is a good thing, because that would have sucked. And
well, I think that would have just blocked you. You wouldn't have been able to do it.
I mean, we could have recorded it, we just wouldn't have been able to release it until the time the embargo expired, basically.
Yeah. And so we were able to get, like, it's actually one of those things that makes me very happy we had that happen. Because Romney and occasionally Aldo, they're the ones that will get these early passes. I'm not usually the guy that does. And so at that point, the fact that Romney had so many Geek News panelists and one special guest, I thought that was awesome that we got a bonus review ahead of time to be able to take to review the, I think you called it the Sony Cinematic Universe at this point?
Sort of.
Or the PlayStation Cinematic Universe?
Well, that's not what I called it. That's just one of my worries that they might try to do, because there are some Easter eggs in the Ratchet and Clank movie, but I hope they stay just that, Easter eggs.
Oh, I thought. See, here's the thing: is we haven't heard anything from Sly in a while. I actually was worried that the project got canceled. And so at that point, like, the only movie that I knew of that was coming was Ratchet and Clank. And therefore, when you actually said that in the episode, I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the only Sony character movie. I haven't heard of anything else other than maybe Sly. But again, we haven't heard from the Sly movie in what, 2-3 years?
Yeah, and my guess is that maybe I guess they figured that, hey, we've got this new Ratchet and Clank game coming out, so maybe instead of putting out Sly Cooper, which hasn't had a game in a while, let's kind of put it on Ratchet and Clank that will have renewed interest. And then, if that film does well, then they may want to go back and say, hey, let's do Sly Cooper because Ratchet and Clank did so well.
Possibly, yeah. That actually makes a lot of sense. And you guys had a lot of good things to say. I actually recommend that people go and check out the bonus episode, if for no other reason than, any extra episode is awesome. I actually was really tempted to leave it a Podomatic only just to get people there, but we loves our YouTube crowd, so I caved and let you guys have it too. And then also I'm being joined by Alex the Shadow Blazer, who I'm kind of surprised that he put in a Modica one because, well, you have a confession to make, good sir.
Yeah, I've had a productive week. I've definitely had a productive week. Yesterday, in particular, I decided, you know what, enough's enough. I've waited too long, and I've spouted my opinions plenty. Being the Nintendo fan I am, I decided it's finally time to go get a Wii U. I was especially wanting to get Star Fox Zero, and now that there's at least a decent set of roster of games like Star Fox, like Splatoon and Smash Brothers and Mario Kart 8, which came bundled with my system in particular.
Okay.
I thought, just time to go get a Wii U. Even if NX is on the horizon, well, at least I have something to play Wii games for a while.
So you didn't actually tell me, like, I know that you got Star Fox Zero, obviously.
Yes.
And you got Mario Kart 8. This is the first I've heard of that. I was actually wondering if you got a bundle. Did you get any other games?
No, just Star Fox and Mario Kart.
Now, I would normally ask you, like, how are you liking the games thus far, but you're having a little bit of issues, and we'll get them fixed. But
Yeah. Well, I've gotten just a little bit into Star Fox. It's not bad so far. There's a few things that irk me just a bit about the game, but so far it's pretty okay.
Okay. So yeah, here are our panelists. Unfortunately, Aldo is not going to be able to make it tonight. I believe he had things going on. He was able to make the Ratchet and Clank review, but he still has a weird schedule where kind of every other week he needs to be off. So nothing against him. We still love and appreciate him. If he wants to show up last minute, he could probably do that and crash the party, and we wouldn't be upset about it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take care of a little bit of business because I already have a feeling people are going to ask, like, why did you have a bad couple of days? So people might remember last week we talked about a story involving Blizzard Entertainment and the private server Nostalrius. And the request that we had gotten was not only to talk about, the reason we talked about it was because of the DDoS attack. That basically brought it to the spotlight here. We did have listener requests for us to talk about it, but mainly because I'm the Blizzard freak and people wanted to know. I also got a request to do a video, so I did. People might remember last Saturday I didn't have the most popular opinion. In fact, I was not in the majority. And so I did the video, and it kind of blew up in my face because, well, a bunch of commenters came out and made their opinion known, and while some of them I was actually able to have some constructive talk with them and actually discuss the issues of this whole situation and why I don't agree with private servers being the good guys in this and why Blizzard is the bad guy. While I got people like that, I also got the average hate that anybody would get for any kind of a controversial video, which Alex and me can attest to this. We've already gotten plenty of our own. We kind of laugh it off. This time around, however, it got way more real, way more vicious, way more hostile. And so, unfortunately, the update here, I'm going to keep this brief. I made it very clear if I continue to get the hate comments, especially the way they are, which was outright personal attacks. And again, I'm not going to name names or anything like that. I'm not that guy. But if they continued, then I was just going to drop the video not drop the video entirely, but I was going to drop the comment section and let my video stand for what it is. It's just opinion. So at that point, I'm going to, again, emphasize that video is strictly my opinion. And yes, unfortunately, the comments are disabled, and people can say I'm silencing opinions or whatnot, but I would like to say that my record on my channel, I think, speaks for itself. I've had plenty of constructive criticism that hasn't been taken down, hasn't been removed. And really what put it over was eventually you can attack me as much as you want, but the attacks didn't end with me. The attacks actually went outright to my wife, my family. I didn't appreciate that, especially since Alex can attest to this. Andrea does stuff on my channel and on Draken Shadow, but I'm very protective of her and any kind of hate that comes her way. And on top of that, people started actually emailing and sending nastygrams to the Geeky Week email. And so these actions together basically said, I've had enough. I'm disabling the comments, and any other hatred, I'm letting the proper people know. Because I'm officially done with that. You guys can like or hate it. This is a decision I have made. So I'm not going to emphasize too much on this aside from that, unless the panelists actually want to chime in and give their opinions on the matter.
Point and simple, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Wheaton's
Really.
Law.
So with that, I don't want to obsess over it. In fact, I want to get to our agenda because, frankly, I want to think about anything other than the attacks that have been happening. So let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to start with the tech portion this evening, and this is going to be another evening where there's more entertainment than there is tech, and that's just because yes, there's more tech to talk about, but most of it is just prepping for E3, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about the E3 rumors all the time. So, and frankly, we had kind of a big week when it came to entertainment. So with our first story, it's actually kind of a culmination of 3 announcements that were made, and somebody actually was bringing to my attention a 4th one, but I'm not remembering it off the top of my head. It was a family member that did. So first of all, we have, I don't know why that one was actually put in there. We have 2 delays. I do not like the word delay anymore. So we have Mirror's Edge Catalyst has been delayed. So a lot of people were actually looking forward to this next month, that it was going to be coming out, and now it is slated to June 7th. So you're not waiting too long. This is basically kind of like the outrage that a lot of people dealt with Uncharted 4, where it got delayed a month. So it was supposed to come out. It was actually supposed to be out by now, and they waited a month to get it out just to tweak out the bugs. So we had Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and I actually do not have the other delay. And oh no, it was Federation Force. Federation Force got a release date announcement. So Metroid Prime Federation Force got a release date announcement, and it's technically a delay because a lot of people were expecting it to be spring 2016, and now it is fall, essentially. Because I think it's in August, isn't it? It's like August 19th or something like that.
Yeah, it got pushed down to August.
Yeah. But thankfully, we have a little bit of good news because Square Enix and Tokyo RPG Factory came out and announced the release of I Am Setsuna, or the release date of I Am Setsuna, which is set for July 9th. I'm getting Mirror's Edge and I Am Setsuna mixed up in my head. It's June 7th for Mirror's Edge and July 9th for I Am Setsuna. And I'm actually kind of happy that I could talk about this now, because when we actually got a story about I Am Setsuna, I was not here. So I gotta say, I'm excited. The first iteration from Tokyo RPG Factory we're going to be able to have in our hands and it's coming to North America, where for the longest time they were actually saying, no, this is going to be strictly Japanese because we don't know how well it's going to do. It's coming here, and it's coming here in like 3 months. Especially since it's like it's not part of the storyline, because people have actually sent me stories saying it is. No, it's heavily inspired by Chrono Trigger. So its gameplay is mostly inspired by Chrono Trigger. And I love that gameplay system, and I'm excited to have another game that plays like it. So I'm going to open it up to the panel. Your thoughts on the 2 delays. So we have Metroid Prime Federation Force, we also had Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and then we also had the release date announcement for I Am Setsuna.
Well, I'm just surprised I Am Setsuna's coming so soon. I thought it was still very early in development here. I thought we were still like a good year or 2 out from it, but I'm actually amazed it's already coming out this year.
You know what? So am I. Because, I mean, when we got the trailers and things like that, I'm like, that's cool and all, but I don't know, like, it didn't tell me enough to say this is how far in development it is. And truth be told, it's always been kind of a bugger for me with JRPGs especially. I can't tell how far along in development they are, because I don't know if like the systems need tweaking or anything like that. So yeah, I'm shocked just as much as you are, Alex, that we're getting the first game from Tokyo RPG Factory this soon. Because I remember back at E3, they were saying like you're probably going to be waiting like 2 to 3 years before the first game actually gets announced. Because at that point, all they had was concept art. That's all they had to show. So, Romney, any thoughts on the delays and release dates?
Well, in the case of Mirror's Edge, I haven't played any of the games, so I'm kind of indifferent on that front. With Federation Force, Nintendo usually has a track record. They don't just delay for the sake of delaying. I mean, when a game's usually delayed that they've announced, then it usually means that they either need to polish something. And I think in the case of the official statement Nintendo gave, is that they were trying to work on some of the balancing issues in regards to the multiplayer, which Federation Force is being marketed primarily as a multiplayer game for the 3DS. And so with that, it's kind of a case of, for the people who were excited, although I doubt there were that many given how upset people were, It just means, hey, it just means they're taking that extra time to polish the game. And as for I Am Setsuna, well, I'm curious. I mean, granted, I probably won't be able to probably won't play it because I don't have a PS4 and I don't have the patience for PC gaming. But hey, it's cool that it's coming out sooner than expected. But that could also, but I'm also a bit cautious because it could be because of they had it ready to go sooner, or it could be because of are they rushing this out for some reason?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Romney, because when I looked at the trailer for I Am Setsuna, it looked simple, at least to me. It looked simple enough that you probably could have had it on PS3. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that, especially considering that this is the first game that's coming out from this division. And I would think you would want as much recognition as you can to it. Now, if Sony has specific rights, then I'm fine with that. But it actually kind of surprised me that it's PS4, it's PC, and it's Vita. Now, we've gone over this numerous times. Like, I'm a Vita fan. I have games on it. In fact, we actually had a listener recommend a Gundam game to me, and I haven't gotten it yet, but, you know, it's just like, cool, there's something on the Vita I can play. But PS3 is missing from that, and like I said, the trailer looked like it was simple enough, it probably could have run on it.
Probably.
But that's probably more of Sony saying, hey, we don't really want people putting stuff on our older console because we're trying to wean people over.
It could be, but I don't know. At this point, it just seems, especially since this, at least to me, this console generation has gotten off on a very slow start, that it probably would have made sense to put it on PS3. And it just kind of boggles my mind that they didn't even go that route. And yeah, that frustrates you, especially because you can't play it. You don't have a PS4. And, I mean, your option here is either buy a Vita or a PS4 or play it on Steam.
Which between the two, at least there is an option to play it. It's better than no option. It's just, again, this may get a lot of hate, but I'm just not a big fan of PC gaming. I mean, to be honest, I don't really use it to play games, and that's just how it is in my case. That's why I don't play PC games, because I use my computer for work.
Yeah, so we had to cut out there in the middle there. I'm just going to remind people, unfortunately, Romney and me are actually having some kind of crappy internet. It's raining pretty bad out here, so
yeah,
if we come in and out, we're apologizing for it. I tried to double the amount of gnome goats for sacrificing, but it may not be enough.
Yeah, we have someone just kind of shoveling them on periodically. Instead of doing one large one, we just have kind of a steady stream of sacrifices being funneled in. Problem is, it takes a while, and the guy, well, we have to pay him in peanuts, and peanuts have just gotten more expensive.
Well, we're paying him in peanuts because all we're doing is asking him to create gnome characters in World of Warcraft to sacrifice. That's all we're asking him to do. I'm not paying him minimum wage for that. It takes 5 seconds to create a character.
Yeah, but then hybridizing with the goats, that's an extra step.
That's what mods are for, my friend. That's what mods are for.
Well, yeah, that's why we're paying him peanuts and not in millet.
Yeah, this is true. So, yeah, I'm a little bit shocked by this whole concept, but the delays actually, I have to admit, like, Mirror's Edge doesn't shock me a whole lot, and the main reason is because they're still going through their whole advertising campaign. And before I know a certain commenter or a certain viewer of the podcast and also of my content, yes, I am reviewing Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Get off my back, please. It will happen, I promise. But Federation Force is probably the bigger shock to me because we were told spring 2016, and now we're looking more like summer 2016, and that's a lot of months, and honestly, that's more than enough time for it to get delayed again. That's the worry I have on the matter, is that's more than enough time for them to delay again, if it's not far enough along. Now, granted, Nintendo doesn't really have that rep, but, well, Zelda Wii U, moving on. Yeah, there really isn't much to talk on this one. I'm looking forward to I Am Setsuna, though. I am interested to see what Tokyo RPG Factory does. Unless we have any other final thoughts, let's move on to the next story.
Well,
which
I
is...
do have one final thought.
Go.
And it's kind of funny. I'm going to speak slowly. In the comments of this IGN article, where they just post a picture of the Setsuna character from Fire Emblem Fates.
Okay. Yeah, your audio kind of cut out in the middle there, so I have a feeling if Romney drops, he'll be back. I promise, people. We're not kicking him out. No, the one that actually, in reference to what you were actually saying, Romney, I've actually seen another one where somebody actually put in a reference to Setsuna from Gundam. So I laughed at that one too. I am Setsuna. Yeah. So, moving on to the next story here, and this one's a little bit sad and a little bit confusing, a little bit, because they do explain it to an extent, is that the current president of Platinum Games, Tatsuya Minami, announced probably on Wednesday or Thursday this week that he was stepping down from his role leading the developer, or leading the studio. Now, they go on to explain, like, his replacement is already in place. Kenichi Sato, who was the executive director of Platinum Games, is now the president. And they do actually go on later in the articles that I've read giving an explanation. It's just a weird one, in my opinion, where basically they say, given that it's the 10th anniversary of the company, they felt it was and I'm quoting here, we feel this is the perfect opportunity to reform our internal structure in order to strengthen our position as a developer, and changes in personnel affairs are a natural part of that. And so at that point, they're basically saying, for our 10th anniversary, we decided we're going to strengthen our infrastructure, and by that, we're going to have the president step down. I don't think he's leaving the company, at least the way that they made it sound is he's not. He's just stepping down to be a director or whatever he wants to do. That's where this is confusing, is because he's stepping down, but he's not necessarily leaving the company. He's not, like, retiring. If you guys haven't seen a picture of him, Minami-san is fairly young, even by Japanese standards. So at that point, this whole thing is just confusing. I get their reasoning for it, but I'm just like, I've never heard of this being done. But granted, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the gaming world when I was a kid. So if it was done, I have no idea. Romney, any thoughts on this?
I think the reason why most people tend to be shocked by this is probably because this news broke up ahead of the release of Star Fox Zero. And so you'd think, oh, the guy's stepping down ahead of the release of a highly anticipated game, which many people in the games industry, or really any industry, would find particularly odd.
Well, and one of the things that I found interesting with it was, yeah, it was ahead of the release of Star Fox Zero, and at that point reviews had come out. Reviews weren't bad. They're mixed at best, both for Guard and for Zero, but it's not. This doesn't feel like he's getting ousted because he did a poor job, especially if the game is doing in the middle. So that's the part that just kind of throws me off. Is like, usually this would be this would be a result of you doing bad work, but that's not the case here.
Yeah, and I think maybe the president here, the former president, probably felt that maybe it was probably the case he out on a high note rather than on a low note. And that may be another reason. And he's simply stepping down. As they say in the article, he isn't leaving the company. He's just no longer going to be the president.
Yeah, I mean, and we also have an official announcement or an official statement from Kenichi Sato. Let me go ahead and quote that. I have recently assumed the position of president and CEO of our company following the departure of Tatsuya Minami at the end of March 2016. With this, our board of executives now consists of myself, Seigo Tabira, and Atsushi Inaba, which I believe are all former Capcom guys.
Yeah, Platinum pretty much broke off from Clover, and that's kind of where we get a lot of those people.
Well, there are other people aside from that, but most of the staff in Platinum right now is ex-Capcom people. Please note that this change in staff structure in no way affects our dedication to our craft. I have utmost confidence that we will continue to create games to the same high standards that our partners and fans have come to expect from us. Again, there's nothing bad being said about Minami-san. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find anything bad being said about him, like that he did a horrible job with Star Fox, or he did a horrible job with Bayonetta 2, or anything like that. This is just what they decided to do. I guess they decided, since now we're officially a AAA developer, we're going to put stronger people in those positions, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a facet of the business, and at least and keep in mind, this article itself is very, I mean, even some of the comments are kind of saying that this article is filled with a lot of conjecture.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a bit because of their in-house game critic.
Arthur Geese, yeah. And apparently he declined, like the Polygon article that we're reading right now, he declined to review the game. Which I thought was a good idea, but that's, again, that adds to the whole problem too. But Polygon's article, I've read IGN's, I've read, I think Game Informer also had something on this, and they're all equally as confusing. The only thing that I can get out of this is that now that they're being considered a AAA developer, is maybe they are trying to put more business-savvy people in those positions. But again, that also brings up a confusing aspect to me, because I didn't believe they had a whole lot of people that wore that. Because I know a lot of the Capcom people that left to make Platinum were devs. And so at that point, I didn't know that we had any executives in there.
They probably brought a great deal of them on in the years of Platinum existing.
Probably.
Between things like Bayonetta, Wonderful 101, and even the Legend of Korra game, they've probably brought on like more business-savvy people to help manage some of their affairs and even broker some of these second-party, third-party agreements with companies like Nintendo and Microsoft.
Yeah, because, I mean, here's the thing, too, is like Star Fox Zero, I didn't even know they were involved in the Star Fox development, because so much of the advertising was based around Shigeru Miyamoto working on this system on his own. Or not on his own, but in the R&D department. So that was part of a shock too. The other thing too is, like, they still have active games coming out. I'm not saying this is going to affect them, but I mean, now I'm kind of worried. Like, we've already gotten a delay for Scalebound, and that was like the one Platinum game I wanted to play this year. It's now set for it's late 2017. So that's a contract they still need to honor.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, any thoughts that you want to add in on the Platinum situation?
Not really, just because there's no hard and fast answers as to why the sudden shakeup now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know a ton about Platinum Games. I don't know a ton of the work they put out, but just from some of the comments I've read, it sounds like they've done a lot of licensed properties in the last few years alone.
They do have a lot of those to their name, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe just a lot of their recent work has just been met with a lot of mediocre reviews, because I'm not really the one to comment on this, but I've heard somewhere that in the world of Japanese corporate, you don't really get fired, you just kind of get sanctioned, you get sent somewhere else, basically.
Not necessarily. I mean, I can mention other gaming Japanese companies that have outright fired people.
Right.
So that does happen. I mean, obviously, a lot of our most favorite developers in Japanese game companies were facing being fired before they came up with their unique property.
Mm-hmm.
So it does happen, but it is a rarity. I'll agree with you on that. With Platinum, however, I mean, the most that I can actually state on the matter is, well, for the longest time, Platinum worked with Sega. That's how they got Bayonetta out. And Bayonetta, I believe, like, Romney may have to correct me on this, it didn't do very well sales-wise. It was more of a cult classic than anything else. And so that was kind of the sad part, why in a lot of cases we didn't think we were going to get Bayonetta 2, and why it was so awesome that Nintendo acquired the rights to do it. So at that point, Platinum for the longest time didn't really have a reputation, and now they do. That's the biggest part that can be taken from this is now Platinum does, because not only you're partially right, Alex, because they got the Transformers property, they got we still have the Turtles property. It hasn't come out yet. What was it? I want to say the Manhattan Project, but that's not it. You guys know what I'm talking about. It looks very 80s, very retro. Mm-hmm. And then we also had Bayonetta 2. What was the Sony one that they were doing? I can't remember. And then we also have Scalebound. So now they have that rep, but earlier on, Alex, they didn't have it. And actually, I've heard a lot of that being that they tried to do more with Sega, and Sega underutilized them. So,
yeah,
which is sad because you had a bunch of former Capcom guys and successful property Capcom guys because Hideki
Kamiya,
who had made Devil May Cry, was part of them. Along with he had worked on like Street Fighter and things like that. They actually have a lot of Street Fighter guys in there, which is weird to me.
But that's the thing with Sega, though. They underutilize a lot of the companies that they bring in. I mean, that's the reason we didn't get a Guilty Gear game for so long, is because, well, they didn't care about
the part that blows my mind is that you had former fighting game guys working on Bayonetta, and it came out so great, so balanced. Because I've played Bayonetta, I haven't played 2 yet, but it came out so beautiful, so balanced. There's like a bunch of fighting game guys did this. That's awesome. I would never have thought of that. You would bring in like the Devil May Cry people. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this story up because unfortunately there isn't a whole lot to it. And if there is any other updates, like if Manami-san comes out and just rips Platinum a new one, we'll obviously cover it. But it sounds to me like the best explanation is they're prepping to be a force to be reckoned with, and the way that they see to do that is to put more business-savvy people in those positions. So the next story that we have tonight is it's coming from an interview with Shuhei Yoshida. And I love Yoshida-san occasionally. Yoshida-san has like these 50-50 moments, because as much as we all like to remember the big moments like where he did the whole, do people remember the YouTube video he did with the whole "this is how you lend games to people"? You have those moments, but then you have Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer. The PlayStation 3 will sell for $599 US. Yeah, you have those moments from Yoshida-san. So I'm not saying that Yoshida-san's a bad person. He just goes 50-50 when it comes to anything public. And so he came out in a recent interview where they're talking more about the now named PlayStation Neo, which is again the PlayStation 4.5 that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. It's now being named the Neo. Insert Keanu Reeves joke here. I'm sorry, Alex, you were going to do one?
I just did.
Yeah, I would have gone the different route. I'm just like, would just watch. The next one after that is called the PlayStation Neo Geo. That's what they were secretly doing, saving SNK.
Don't do it, because then people are going to actually ask me to go dig out the Nathan Barnett music video about the Neo Geo, because that happened last week when we brought up a Neo Geo game. That I had to dig out that video, and nothing against Nathan Barnett, but no, I'm not going to do it. Most of his stuff, I find him funny occasionally, but not all the time. So yeah, we had that happen, and I actually, really quick, Alex, because I'm now thinking about this. You brought up the Matrix, so shame on you, because you should bring up that Keanu actually gained another word in his repertoire in that movie.
Oh.
Yeah, he has whoa and shit. I like making that joke. So, in this interview about the PlayStation Neo, Shuhei Yoshida was given plenty of questions, and one of them led to how does this affect the future development, and basically asking, how does this lead to PlayStation 5? What is PlayStation 5 going to look like when you have this PlayStation Neo that's going to be more powerful than the 4? Because usually when people go to that assessment, they say, oh, yes, obviously the PlayStation 5 will be more powerful than the PlayStation 4. And we got this quote, and I'm just going to go ahead and quote him. What does the PlayStation 5 look like? You mean if, or you mean if. And basically he was asked, are you willing to say it on stage? And yeah, it's an if. And a lot of people have taken this, and there's numerous stories going, there may not actually be a PlayStation 5. Can I just get something off my chest really quick? The PlayStation 4 has been out for 3 years, people! Can I just point out how long the previous console generation lasted? It's still technically going.
Well,
and we're already talking about the next generation?
Wait, by previous generation, are you talking like Wii, 360, PS3?
360, PS3, Wii.
Well,
I'm not considering it ended because people are still actively playing on those consoles.
Yeah, but they have stopped, as of recently, Microsoft did stop manufacturing the 360.
The consoles, yes, but games are still being developed for them. Granted, they're multi-platform releases, but there's still games coming out for them. And basically, at least the way that I like to look at it is, when games stop being developed for that generation is when that generation ends. It's just a usual rule of thumb to go by, because it usually takes a while for that generation to not necessarily fall out of life cycle, but for it to become irrelevant at that point, especially in the current mindscape. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, it ended as soon as PS4 and Xbox One hit the scene. I don't know why we wouldn't say it was Wii U, but it's still 10 years! 10 years! People are going to have to remind me on that. How long did PS2, Xbox, and GameCube last? It had to have been at least 7.
Yeah. Although, to kind of play devil's advocate here, well, not really devil's advocate, I can kind of see what Sony might be alluding to, where, I mean, given that there's all the issues regarding backwards compatibility, the move to more digital-only distribution, I think what they may be looking to embrace is that rather than having a new console, having to buy new games, and developing new dev kits, they would probably just start putting out consoles that you can upgrade, that you can change, that you can update with firmware, much like a PC. And that seems to be kind of what they're hoping to do with the PlayStation Neo, is just a more powerful machine that can handle certain firmware updates and certain upgrades that either Sony would do themselves or that the consumers would be able to do. Because I can see that that's probably the way the market may have to go, because, I mean, let's face it, given how resistant we all were about the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One, I'm thinking Sony's thinking, okay, switching to a new console, that's not working anymore. Let's see if maybe we can make a version of our PlayStation that can be upgraded over time. That way we don't have to create new dev kits.
Well, and I've actually come out and said that, I didn't say it was next generation, I said it was probably the generation after that, where we would actually have, like, there wouldn't be branded consoles anymore, so to speak. We would all have, like, a generalized platform that we can get this stuff on, and Sony and Nintendo and all of them could just develop on that. Which I still believe. I still think at some point, you know, the whole concept of Steam machines for everybody kind of makes sense, although I could see, you know, there being a PlayStation operating system only, kind of like there is now with PC and Mac and Linux, where you have to develop for each operating system. Sony and Nintendo might just say, well, no, you need to play this on the Nintendo operating system. I could see that happening, but by majority, I really do think that what you're proposing, Romney, would actually happen a generation later. I know a lot of people have speculated that Sony is basically admitting they don't want to do games anymore. They want to refocus their efforts. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, because PlayStation has done well enough for them that I think, especially in this generation, where they're, especially when it comes to things like indie developers, they're still considered one of the better people to work with.
Yeah. Plus, the biggest counter argument to that, I literally saw this morning. the Ratchet and Clank movie, because if they're going to go through the effort of making movies based on these properties, they're obviously going to still be making games based on these properties.
Yeah, and the argument that's being made that this is their concept is very hard to swallow, because it's PlayStation TV and the Vita. And at that point, if it was just them, I would understand, but you also have consoles that are doing well. So at that point, to just say Sony doesn't want anything to do with this when PlayStation TV and Vita crashed, I'm not buying it. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm not necessarily buying that concept. I think, in all honesty, what really happened here is Yoshida-san doesn't know, because I'm guaranteed, like, we've made this comment before where, like, as soon as the console is released, then the team gets together and starts writing up ideas for what they want to do with the next console. And so at that point, Yoshida-san may not know what they're going to do with PlayStation 5 because they haven't come together on that consensus yet. They're still in that development stage and still trying to figure out, okay, well, we came out with this Neo thing. What can we do that is going to define PlayStation 5 compared to PlayStation 4? And I don't think they have that answer. That's why I think Yoshida said if, is because they're just not there yet. And they shouldn't be. I mean, the average console lifespan used to be 5 to 7 years, I think it was the average, and then this previous generation came in and made it last for 10. So then at that point, you have to actually assume, with current operating systems, things like that, and that they're getting updated, that this generation will last at least 10.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I mean, we have the Wii U that is kind of the oddball here, because I have a feeling that really this generation probably will be defined with the NX in it as the contender, not necessarily the Wii U. Please, Nintendo fans, don't come against me on the matter. I'm not saying the Wii U's bad, but it really feels to me, with all of this NX advertising, that they're moving on, and that's what they want to be their console contender. So at that point, that's why I think he said these things. But Alex, you've actually been kind of quiet on the matter. What are your thoughts on Yoshida's answer on that?
I mean, well, I never like trying to predict the future with anything as ever changing with like media and entertainment, because everything can change and nothing can change at the same time. There's no crystal ball, right? And absolutely, he's the gaming industry right now is in such a crossroads. It is hard to say, is there going to be a PlayStation 5? Who knows? There may be, maybe not. I mean, we're not that far into this generation yet, and certainly gaming consoles more than ever have been built to last, just because of a lot of other circumstances that go on. And certainly developers are already issuing concerns over the PlayStation Neo about developing for that now, even though Sony's saying there's not going to be any special differences, they're just saying it's going to be a slightly more souped up version, but developers are still voicing their concern. So it is too soon to say what's going to be coming with the PlayStation 5, if at all. And I understand why he would say if, because I'm sure even Sony doesn't know. I mean, Sony's had some problems in the last year. Weren't they having like some serious financial troubles, the whole Sony corporation?
Well,
you mean about PlayStation?
I'm just talking the entire Sony corporation here, because Sony's obviously a very big corporation.
I'm not entirely sure, because
there was
something I can't keep, or Sony too. I can't keep track of.
Well, yeah, and there is the whole thing that they were still reeling from some of the drop in shares because of the huge Sony hack, and so there's still some damage they're trying to reel, that they're still moderately reeling from because of all the fun stuff that came with.
Yeah, are you talking about the DDoS attack or the hack that lasted like 2 months?
The hack that was basically blamed on North Korea.
Okay, yeah, the one that actually came to my mind was the one where they had to come out in E3 and publicly apologize.
That was like, what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. But I have a feeling that might have affected things too. It didn't help when the DDoS attack happened last year for both companies, I would think. But this whole story comes across to me as this simple concept, kind of a pet peeve at this point. You know, when I can't even believe I'm bringing this concept up, and I'm going to go with it. When the last election happened, we were literally campaigning the next day for our candidates. All right, both sides on any given issue. Romney, you look like you're lost. Are you not sure what I'm talking about, or?
It's ringing a bell. I'm just was looking some of the additional details. So.
Yeah, it's like when 2012 happened. Like, I'm not kidding. A day or two later, already people were putting up nominees and stuff like that. And that's how this is feeling to me. It's like, that's ridiculous.
I had the same thought process. This does feel like an election cycle all over again. It's like the presidential election just ended. So who's going to be the front runner for the next election?
And what doesn't help the situation, at least from a gaming perspective, sorry I went all political, people, but it's a good comparison. What doesn't help the situation is Nintendo. Nintendo is you know, we got the NX rumors going out here and there. We've also got you know, controllers getting leaked, so it's just like, the next generation is already here, and at that point, that's what it feels like. Is, you know, we've only had these consoles for 2-3 years, and already we're talking about what's next. Like, are you not satisfied, people? The PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 had amazing libraries. Oops, I think that probably hit the mic. Accident, people. But yeah, we had amazing libraries on both the 360 and the PS3 that came over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, what are we officially writing off the One and the PS4 at this point? I'm not. I actually think they've got a lot of potential and a lot of great games still coming. But I may be the only one in there. Romney? Okay, go ahead, Romney.
No, I've just... The whole election comparison just put my brain into, like, thinking... Would that make John Romero the game industry's equivalent of Donald Trump? I mean, think about it. He does all the boasting, like saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna make you my bitch. I'm gonna make you pay for a wall."
Romney. Yes. Yes.
Just hope he doesn't. I mean, I'm thinking Microsoft's like thinking, okay, who are we gonna hire to develop this next console? And they're thinking, oh, let's get John Romero.
I could probably take game developers and compare them to all the candidates personally, but yes, John Romero is the Donald Trump.
Except he actually has hair.
Trump fans, I'll send your stuff to wherever I send it. Because you're going to write shine. You're going to write it anyway. Although, I would actually dare say the difference is probably Trump is a little bit more aggressive than John Romero at this point. Because John Romero does actually shut up. Oops.
True.
So, there really isn't a whole lot else to go with this aside from, yay, we might get a PS5. Yay, we gotta go pay $400 again.
Hey, most of the games we have for the console will be worthless in some time in the near future, maybe.
Yay!
What's the use? It's all going to turn to dust one day anyway, said James Rolfe in one of his great videos.
Trying to think, is that the Mega Man one?
I think I want to say that's the Rob episode.
Could be Rob, but yeah, he said something similar in the Mega Man video if you haven't watched it. Let's go ahead and move into the entertainment portion tonight because, well, we got a lot more stories to cover there, and I'm going to go ahead and instantly credit both Alex and Romney with their portion of the Prozac budget because
I didn't bring up any of these deaths. I'm innocent.
Yes, you are. Okay, for the record, Alex is indeed innocent. I don't know why I pointed over here. Alex is indeed innocent because he didn't report any of these things.
Well, you pointed over there because that's normally where I sit with Dragon Shadow.
Yes. But you'll notice that there was another story that you put in that didn't get covered, which was a Change.org petition. So there you go. I'm not going there, but yeah, people might remember in January we had like 10 deaths that we reported on, and this month has not fared any better because we've had 4 celebrity deaths, and I am going to just preface this completely with our hearts go out to the families, and we're sorry that these people have passed on, and thank you for the contributions that they have all done to their respective formats of media, because they are all from different walks as far as that is concerned. So we're going to go ahead and just go through these one by one, and we're going to go ahead and start with the probably the most prominent one, the death of Prince. So Prince, I believe, his body was found 2 days ago.
Yeah, it was found inside of an elevator, and although there has been an autopsy done, nobody really knows entirely what happened. Some are saying that he was battling with the flu. Some are saying that he overdosed or had a lot of drugs in his system. Point being, It was very, very sudden.
So at this point, so he was 57, by the way, and yeah, he was found in an elevator. And I still remember, like, the first time I actually heard about this was the autopsy, and the autopsy, or the coroner coming out and basically saying, we're not going to know for another couple of days or a couple of weeks until then what he actually died from. But that's why we have the speculations that we do. I had not heard the flu concept. I had heard the possible overdose. But I'm not going to dwell on the negative there, especially with things like overdose, because you never like to hear that happen, especially with people that you liked. I will admit, I already know at least my sister, who's very involved in music, is probably very sad to see Prince go. I will admit also, I don't have a whole lot of connection to Prince. I may have been too young for his music. I don't even think I've ever heard a song from Prince. The only reason I know Prince is because of the whole fight with the record companies where he became the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah,
where he was basically trying to avoid paying or living up to contract deals by saying, I'm not Prince, I am Symbol.
Yeah.
So that's really how I know Prince. So I can't really relate any experience on the matter. If I've heard his song, I just don't know he did it. So at this point, do you either of you guys have any kind of experience with Prince?
Well, Prince, unfortunately, he's a bit before my time as well. The most experience I can say I ever heard and know of Prince is because he did the songs for Tim Burton's Batman.
Did he?
Yeah.
You're talking the original one?
Yeah, the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie. He wrote all the songs.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But then again, I haven't seen that movie, so.
In my case, as someone who is a little bit more versed in music, I haven't heard a lot of Prince. I mean, the main songs that I have heard has been stuff like When Doves Cry, Raspberry Beret, and that's pretty much it. And I do acknowledge that he was a talented musician. It's just Prince just wasn't really quite on my radar. And keep in mind, I know a lot of people are going to be very angry, but you gave a whole spiel about David Bowie. I'm still new to there's a lot of music I've only been recently discovering.
Yeah, and even though Bowie was technically before my time too, one of the things that made Bowie relevant was that he was doing other forms of media. And I think Prince really wasn't doing that.
Well, he tried, because there was the film Purple Rain. He tried that the clone of Myst. That was the video game. And so I do acknowledge that, at least in terms of his music, he was talented. I mean, the only song that comes to my mind that I remember actually enjoying was When Doves Cry, just because of the unique structure to it. And so, although I'm not as attached to his music the way other people are, it is a shame that we're losing yet another very talented individual when there are much less talented people that I'm pretty sure that this Grim Reaper should probably be taking instead. And
at 57 too. I mean, that's still pretty young.
Still pretty young. That's not the youngest we have tonight, but it is fairly young, especially considering. I mean, when Bowie passed on, he was.
He was in his 60s, I think.
He was in his 60s, and so at that point, there's a distinction there. the other one that comes to my mind is the voice of Admiral Akbar. I mean, he was 90, I think is what it was, 90, 96, something like that. So at that point, that makes sense. But when you see things like 57, it's just like cut down in prime. Like he could have taught so many musicians at that point. And I don't know this for certain, but I'm sure my sister will tell me how much he broke ground in the music industry. I'm sure you guys will tell me how much he broke ground. I just don't know it. Unfortunately, like I know David Bowie because Bowie got into other forms of media and therefore encouraged you to go and look into his music career. Prince, not so much. I mean, I knew the artist formerly known as Prince, and I knew the Dave Chappelle joke that he did, or the joke Dave Chappelle did about Prince, but that's about all I knew. So at that point, I'm not trying to be rude. It's hard for me to relate to this. I'm sorry to see Prince is gone, but yeah, it's not like he has touched any part of my life, unfortunately. So the second one that we need to get into, this one resonates a little bit with me, which is Doris Roberts. So most people will know Doris. I know Doris Roberts from other roles, but most of the people will know Doris Roberts as the mother-in-law or the mom from Everybody Loves Raymond. So I want to say the mother-in-law because most of her interactions were with Raymond's wife instead of Raymond, but she is technically Raymond's mom in that. Another comparison you can make is if you're part of the Full House generation, she was also part of that cast because I think she was officially Bob Saget's character's mom. That's the thing that Doris Roberts is actually kind of known for, is most of her roles are actually taking on, like, or at least in the latter part of her career, motherly, grandmotherly kind of roles. At least to my knowledge. I don't know if she ever took on like a leading lady in her youth. But
yeah. Looking at it, she very much was a character actor in a lot of television shows. Looking at stuff like Murder, She Wrote, The Love Boat, Naked City, The Defenders, not related to the Marvel series, just want to make that clear.
No, there were other series called The Defenders. No. I still remember an 80s cartoon series that tried to get off the ground called The Defenders. So it just happens, and it's not Marvel. I'm going to open it up to the panel here. Like, do people actually remember Doris Roberts in any of these roles? I think, Alex, you would probably be the one that probably wouldn't, because Full House is kind of past your time. I know you watch some sitcoms, but not. I don't think Everybody Loves Raymond is in there.
I've seen her on Full House, and I've seen her on Raymond. My parents really loved Everybody Loves Raymond, so I've seen it plenty times. Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot of other Doris Roberts roles, but I do know she's also in Christmas Vacation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she is. But yeah, again, a lot of her stuff is like taking on motherly, grandmotherly, maybe an occasional sister kind of role. I didn't realize she was a character actor, or a character actress. That would have been nice to know. I'm actually just trying to look through her resume, and most of it is exactly what you would think it is. You know, her playing a motherly or a wife kind of role. But nonetheless, she's had a prominent effect on acting. I mean, obviously she's been around for a long time. I know she's done some animation. I just can't remember right off the top of my head what it was for. But I know I've heard her voice.
Yeah, looks like she was in The Wild Thornberrys, Phineas and Ferb, Secret of Nim 2, unfortunately, Real Monsters. I'm seeing what else she might have been in.
This generation would know her too, because she did Lizzie McGuire. And she, again, probably as a grandmother, she's done, obviously, Law & Order comes in here and there. She's done Grey's Anatomy. Holy crap, she's gotten around. She's got quite the resume to her. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the details here. It was probably natural causes, because I wasn't able to look up a cause here, but she was 90. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I'm going to take a wild guess here and say, since I can't see anything else, it was natural causes. I'm sad to see her go. I have distinct memories of her, not just from the sitcoms, but also I know she's done animation here and there, and she has a very unique kind of voice that I wanted to hear more often. But unfortunately, that's kind of the end for her, and she will be missed.
Looks like you're right. Natural causes.
Okay. The third one that we need to get into was actually brought to my attention from a listener, because I'm not as engaged in that property anymore. But since we brought up a previous story in that regard, they decided to bring this our way, which was, unfortunately... Oh, I'm going to murder her name. Joni Laurer, I think is how you say it. AKA, she is mostly known for her work with World Wrestling Entertainment, or the World Wrestling Federation at the time, as Chyna. So Chyna was part of the 90s Attitude Era that sparked a lot of popularity and wide appeal for World Wrestling Federation at the time. And she was known, especially being kind of a, I want to say a Xena-esque kind of figure, but she was definitely a woman with more masculine features. And so therefore, actually, I had the listener provided a lot of her accomplishments, and I also had to go to resources like What Culture Wrestling on YouTube to get all of these. But she's had quite a bit of actual in-ring accomplishments with World Wrestling Entertainment. I remember her when I used to watch, but at that point she was in a relationship angle, I think was with Eddie Guerrero. So at that point I can't really talk too much about it. Apparently after she had a falling out with World Wrestling Entertainment, she hooked up with a former wrestling buddy, Sean Waltman, and filmed a porno. And basically, I guess, anchored herself from that point on into the adult industry. However, it does look like she was trying to make a move back into World Wrestling Entertainment, however brief that may have been. But unfortunately, she has passed away at the age of 45.
Damn.
She is the youngest here. And it looks like the cause of death was an accidental overdose, I'm guessing from painkillers. That's my guess. I looked everywhere to see like what the drug was, and I couldn't find an exact one. But especially since a lot of people, like with Prince, they were still reporting on facts as they were coming out. But the way that it's looking is that she was found in her house, or found in her apartment. I believe it was a friend of her. Yeah, police were notified by a friend who went to check on her and found Laura unresponsive. And then at that point, the police put in the investigation and didn't see any form of foul play. And so that's why they're taking the guess that it was an accidental overdose. We've seen various wrestlers and other people in media that she worked with coming out in support of her, but you know, it's just unfortunate to hear at 45 you're done. You know, especially since I know her death has basically sparked a movement to get her into the World Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Fame, which at this point I don't think the company was even going to consider her based on all of the adult entertainment that she did. However, again, a lot of the sources that I actually had to look up on this, apparently she's not the only one that has, and there actually is a Hall of Fame member who did have Playboy stuff on her record, so there's like a big movement now to in honor of her death to bring her into the Hall of Fame. I'm probably the only one on this panel that can speak of it, because I actually saw Chyna and I know who she is, and in fact, I still remember when Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines was coming out, she was actually a prime candidate to play the TX. She was going to be the female Terminator instead of, I can't remember who eventually got the role, but she was like a prime candidate, and then the whole adult movie thing happened, and she was taken out of consideration, I believe. But I think I'm the only person on the panel that can actually talk about her wrestling career in particular. I don't think any of us can talk about her adult entertainment career.
At least not
really.
publicly.
You want to confess something, Romney?
No, I'm just saying, well...
I do know, just because of a joke, apparently it was either the Cinema Snob or somebody else, apparently she did an Avengers porno and she was the She-Hulk. So, I don't know. I do know back when there was talk of a third Fantastic Four movie, however brief, because of Rise of the Silver Surfer. She was actually one of the considered people. They wanted to do She-Hulk, and she was one of the considered people. So her and I think Lucy Lawless got brought up too, but
Yeah.
this is one that's kind of hard to talk about. I mean, when we had the WrestleMania story where they were talking about DBZ characters, we could talk about DBZ. We could relate to it on that angle. But I think I'm the only one that's actually even remotely seen her in anything. And it's mostly wrestling. I know she's done TV and I know she's done movies, but it's their brief roles.
Yeah, because I mean, I've gone on record. I'm not a big fan of wrestling. I can't really comment in this case.
Yeah, I think the biggest part, at least for me, is just the 45 thing. I did not realize she was that young, and she passed away. That's the saddest part of this whole thing. Is like, especially in given a wrestler's career, she still maybe had a few years left. And this is how it ended. And in essence, it's always sad to hear like either an overdose or an accidental overdose. You never want to hear life ending like that. Final thoughts before we move on to the next one, which is actually really recent. We heard about it today, in fact. I'll take that as a no. So the next one is, like I said, recent. It came out literally. I saw it this morning. I don't know when the news broke, but oh man, her first name is now eluding me. Is it Katie McNamara?
Michelle.
No, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle McNamara, the wife of Patton Oswalt, unfortunately passed away today, and I don't think we even have a whole lot of information regarding her death just yet. I know it is an overdose. That was like the first thing I looked up for it, and it wasn't that.
Yeah, so far, according to all the official sources, no cause of death has been provided yet because the death was very sudden. It's just what it's been officially listed as that she passed away in her sleep.
Yeah. Now, as far as stuff that she's actually done, she is a crime writer who founded the website TrueCrimeDiary.com. She is obviously the wife of comedian Patton Oswalt. I don't really know a whole lot of her career aside from this, probably because she kind of got shadowed by Patton. But you know, if she was a writer, I'm guessing for crime stories and things like that. But yeah, it's still, even though she's not the celebrity here, it's still sad because you not only feel bad for Michelle because her career is over, and she's 46. Oh, dang it. Oh, man. Like a year off from China. Oh. Again, I don't want to hear death this young. Oh, I am so close to this. Oh. And also you have to feel bad for Patton because it's his wife. And, you know, he actually came out and did the announcement for it, but this just feels just rotten, especially considering all the things that Patton has coming on in the coming years of his life. I mean, he's set for MST3K. I think he still has an active role on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's just one of those things where I really hope that he has enough time to properly mourn Michelle's death, and nobody ever wants to report that news. I can actually attest to that. Passed away in her sleep. I wonder if she had a condition she didn't want to tell anybody about. But so thoughts from you guys, because I'm speechless at this point. This is just blowing my mind. Another 40-year-old.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and this may sound kind of callous coming from me, but with just the amount of deaths we've had in this year alone, it's hard not to just become almost numb to it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I haven't really been commenting that much, because I'm just like, so many, there's just, you can only produce so much, and it's just, yeah, I don't mean to be cruel. I mean, yeah, I feel my heart, my thoughts go out to the families of all these respective people, because death is a tragic thing in and of itself, but...
Death is death is death. I mean, we don't want to hear about it. there are a couple of times where we can respectfully say, yeah, it was your time. I mean, Christopher Lee was a perfect example of this, man. That guy was not necessarily knocking on death's door. We wanted to see him do like another 10 years worth of work. But, well, he was up there in years, and we knew that wasn't going to happen. Same thing happened. Same thing with Doris Roberts, is eventually the body just tells you no. And so, while it is sad, these ones that are in 50s and 40s just... Oh, they make me want to cry. They really do. Not just because I'm close to that age, just because it makes me want to cry. Because of the talent that we could have potentially gotten from these people. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Alex.
Yeah, and it looks like, unfortunately, Michelle does leave behind her 7-year-old daughter.
Yeah, that's right. Patton did have a kid, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now I feel even worse because I'm a father and I can relate.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all we can really say is that, at least in my case, thoughts go out to Patton Oswalt and his family, to China's family, to living relatives related to Prince, and to the relatives of Doris Roberts, because death is tragic. It's just with how sad. I mean, and again, I don't mean to sound cruel. I feel for these people. It's just when the media reports on all these celebrity deaths back to back to back.
That's one of the casualties that happens of the 24-hour news cycle. Is if any celebrity dies, you have to report it.
Yeah, and it's just a case. It becomes white noise at this point. That's why I don't really have much to say, is because it gets exhausting, kind of following all this, and it's just
it's one of those times where, like, when we report on things like Bob Hoskins or on Christopher Lee, it's just them. And so at that point, I'm not trying to belittle anybody's death here, because any death is a prominent thing, and I do feel bad for their families, because I know what they're going through. But at the same time, like, when you have that moment where it's like Bob Hoskins or Christopher Lee, you can have that homage and say, look back on what they've done, and at least smile for that. But then we have this year where we had 10 deaths in January of a lot of prominent celebrities, including Alan Rickman and David Bowie, and now we're having these 4 this year or this month. It's just like, yeah, it does make you numb. It's like you get used to hearing all the bad news. I mean, bad news gets sent to our Facebooks, to our Twitters, and all that, and you eventually desensitize yourself to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for lack of a better, I'm not trying to be mean here. Unless you guys have any final thoughts, I'm going to move on to the next story, because I really don't want to extend the Prozac budget any further. We're already overdue.
Yeah.
So the next story is at least a little bit more happy, and I'm thankful that Alex found it, because I had not even heard that he was going to get any kind of acknowledgement this way. And the story came from Anime News Network, but I was able to find a couple of articles stating it. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences announced on Tuesday, via press release, that voice actor Frank Welker will receive the Lifetime Achievement Award at the 43rd Annual Daytime Creative Arts Emmy Awards.
About time is all I can say.
Yeah, about freaking time.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Look, I love Peter Cullen, but when you look at Peter Cullen's body of work compared to Frank Welker's, nothing against Peter, love you, Peter, but Frank really deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award at this point. This article goes on to state a few of the things he's done throughout, but dude, I'm not gonna lie to you people. Frank Welker's list of work is huge.
Mm-hmm.
He is a renowned voice actor, and I can guarantee you have heard his voice in something you've watched.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like one of those few voice acting geeks that can point them out to you, because Frank has that level of body of work. So here's a couple of examples that were actually brought up in the article. He did voiceover for animation such as Freddy in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? I think he came in later to play Freddy in one of the later series, too. Anime fans will know him for Totoro. He is the dubbed voice of Totoro. I would actually say that's one of those few roles where his voice isn't as recognizable. Here's the thing about Frank, people. His voice isn't that recognizable. All right? So, like, when you listen to your anime, yeah, you can hear Vic Mignogna. Yeah, you can hear Laura Bailey. Yes, you can hear Stephen Bloom. If you don't believe me that you can hear Stephen Bloom, then I suggest you all go to Draken's Shadow right now and watch our Batman Arkham Asylum review, because he's very recognizable. Frank is not. Frank has got one of those voices that's hard to discern.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, and I'm actually saying Totoro is one of the harder ones. Unless I'd actually been told by an anime reviewer, I would not have known he was in it until I hit the cast list.
Yeah, and that's just only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the ones that come to my mind, you've got Scooter from the Muppet Baby series. You've got frickin' Abu from Aladdin. You've got Megatron, Soundwave,
That's another one that a lot of people would not know is Abu from Aladdin. Like, that's the one I love blowing people's minds with, is he played the monkey from Aladdin. It's like, why would we care about that? Because that's what voice actors do occasionally. They play the dog. You know, and look, how beloved is Abu? And there's Frank Welker's voice. He has Horror from The Page Master. He is that character. Going off more of his anime notoriety, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, he's in that. Porco Rosso, so you can see he's part of the Disney stable. They do call him up when they need either a voice or like an animal actor or something like that. Blood the Last Vampire. I didn't even know he had that one on it. Escaflowne the movie. Wow, he had Escaflowne the movie. Oh, I'm even learning something tonight. His most prominent role, however, was he was a very recognizable voice from your childhood if you grew up in the 80s. And the reason I say that is because I believe Cobra Commander is a voice from him. If you were a fan of Transformers, he played virtually every Decepticon. And I can back that up, people. I can back it up. He is credited for, like, I think the enemy of the Decepticons ended up with, like, 50, 60 bots. He plays at least 30 of them. And they're usually the same voice. So that's another thing. So, more prominent ones. He is the original Megatron. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, we ever heard him in the movies? He was in the games. For some reason, they stuck with Hugo Weaving, but they did bring him into the movies later to play another prominent role he used to do of Soundwave. So he was in the movies technically. He also played Galvatron in the series. He played Starscream, numerous others. I could literally list them all out. But this guy had, like, for all the people that are going to scream, this guy doesn't deserve a Lifetime Achievement Award, contain your temper, Adam. Contain your temper. Because this guy deserves it and a half. This guy's worked his butt off. Like, I would love to meet Peter Cullen, because he's the voice of the original Optimus Prime. But if I was ever in the room with Frank Welker, to have me not just nerdgasm and want his autograph and want a picture with him and want a selfie with him and all of that, it happened! I want to meet the guy! He may not have, like, he played some of my most favorite villains. He played some of my most favorite characters. And beloved characters. I don't care if you don't like Pagemaster. Horror is still a good character. Okay, I'm going to get off my rant now. Any thoughts on Frank Welker from the rest of the panel?
Yeah, I agree. Just a well-deserved award. The man has done 1,000,001 characters. I'm so glad to see him getting some recognition. I mean, voice actors aren't generally given a lot of the credit that they really deserve, period. So to see one get a Lifetime Achievement Award, sure, it's a daytime Emmy, but just some recognition somewhere, I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, like, back in when Frank Welker started out, there was probably a very likely concept that you were not going to get any kind of recognition for voiceover work. Because, I mean, the first thing I can bring up is Mel Blanc. You know, even though he was also the animator, he was also the voice of Bugs Bunny and a few other Looney Tunes. Another one that comes to mind is Casey Kasem. Casey Kasem is mostly known for radio, but he also had a lot of voiceover work under his belt that a lot of people didn't know about. So it's unheard of up until this point to have a voice actor get this level of recognition. And you know what? I'm happy that it starts with Frank. It didn't start with Frank. I think there's been a few others, but I'm glad that it's here with Frank, because I mean, this guy is the man of 1,000 voices, and he's not retired yet, people. He's one of those guys that you would actually have to call security, because he'll still do voices for you. And so at that point, to honor him, I think it's just a milestone in entertainment. Romney, any thoughts you'd like to add to this?
I think you pretty much hit most of them on the head. It's very much a case of he deserves the accolades because he's been a lot of voices for a lot of different projects, some of which he started from way back when and is still voicing those characters today. I mean, the big one that often comes to mind in that regard would be Fred from Scooby-Doo, where even in newer shows, he's still the voice of Fred.
He's still the voice of Fred. He's still the voice of Megatron. Like any new Transformers franchise, even though Peter Cullen kind of comes back here and there, Frank always comes back to play a Decepticon. The other one that comes to mind is the G.I. Joe animated series reboot that the Hub did. He came back for that. He didn't play Cobra Commander. He played somebody else. But Frank will come back on a lot of these projects. And here's the thing, too. Video games has only expanded his roster. Because he's also known for a lot of game roles. None of them right off the top of my head are coming to my mind, aside from movie tie-ins, obviously. But, I mean, this is one of those things where I would only hope to aspire to be half of what Frank Welker is as a voice actor. Because this guy's been doing it for a long time. This guy's like... the best example is... is there really even an actor who has done as much as Frank Welker has done for voiceover?
Aside from Mel Blanc?
Mel Blanc, yeah. Well, no, I'm talking like actor. Like, he's in everything. And I don't think you can even do that. Nobody has as many projects as Frank Welker has in voiceover.
Or at least have as many projects and is not as prolific.
That is the main argument there. So congratulations to Frank Welker. Major kudos. Our thoughts go out to you. Continue to do what you love, man. You know what? I want to hear Frank Welker for as long as you are willing to give us. And that actually says he is being honored for 50 years of work. I hope you're there for another 10 to 25. I really do. I don't know if I want you voice acting when you're 100. I want you to get a retirement. But moving on to the next story here. This one is another interesting one because of how unusual it is. So we've reported on a Twilight Zone reboot that it was happening. In fact, I just barely referenced it earlier on tonight. But we've reported that there was going to be a Twilight Zone reboot. Obviously we've reported on the Tales from the Crypt reboot that's going to be done by M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong. But up until that point, we really didn't know a whole lot about the Twilight Zone reboot until now. So it turns out that Ken Levine will be writing and directing the pilot episode at the very least for the series. And if you don't know Ken Levine, all I have to do is say Big Daddy, and you probably know who he is. I don't know about the rest of the panel. I think that would work with Aldo.
Well, I know who Ken Levine is. I'm the one who brought this story.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you are. So at that point, if you don't know who Ken Levine is known for being one of the creative team for the series BioShock. I know he was there for the first game. I'm not sure if he was there for the second, but Infinite, he was definitely there too. So, and that people will remember, actually, no, you wouldn't, because, again, this was back in the Radio SLCC days. We reported on the BioShock team getting dismantled, and that Ken Levine didn't know where he was going from here. Apparently, he's going here. He is going to go write the Twilight Zone reboot. And
the key thing here is that it's not even just a reboot where it's a new series,
no.
But there's a specific element to this reboot that is probably why they brought Ken Levine in, and that's the fact that it's going to be interactive.
Yes. So for the longest time, we didn't even know specifically how this reboot was going to happen. We knew I think when we reported on this, we were guessing it was going to be TV because obviously Twilight Zone is TV. But up until that point, I'd seen stories here and there where they were talking like, we want to do radio only, or we want to have like a completely interactive experience through your television kind of thing. I hadn't even heard the whole concept of like a choose your own adventure kind of format with the episodes and going to somebody like Netflix to distribute it. And so at that point, like every idea had been just shown under the sun on this one. And the fact that they brought in Ken Levine, especially when they're looking for a more interactive property, there's no better guy. Because I have a feeling like, yeah, I don't think anybody better, Romney, could do this job. Because some of the twists that the Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite do, yeah, I can't think of another guy that can do it better.
And really, one thing that a lot of people need to remember is that with the Twilight Zone, and it's something that even Levine's mentioned in the article himself in the interview, is that a lot of the stories, although they ranged in genre, most of the time they were science fiction, and most of the time they were basically morality plays that were illustrating a clear idea. I mean, off the top of your head, you could think of, say, well, I mean, a lot of people like to make the joke of, oh, they had an episode about libraries and how they're a disappearing resource, or an episode about being obsessed with reading and then having the glasses break. Basically, the Twilight Zone, it kind of is in the same tradition as a lot of the science fiction and even some horror comics like Tales from the Crypt, where, yeah, you're going on this journey, but at the end of it all, it is basically a morality play that basically illustrates something about the human condition, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. I mean, one of my favorite episodes is about a former Nazi SS officer who returns to a concentration camp to relive the glory days, and then he's basically haunted by all the ghosts of all the people he killed. And the final line that I like is that they find the guy, like, scared to death, and then one of the bystanders just asks, why do we still have the place here? Why do we leave it here? And then Rod Serling's just like, they must all stand. All the Auschwitzes, all the Dachau's, they must all stand so that we never repeat history.
Well, and here's the thing, too, is that Twilight Zone didn't just go to TV. I actually remember my dad owning a lot of Twilight Zone paperback books that he still loved to read from time to time just because they were little short story kind of things. And he loved the heck out of them. And they weren't stories repeated from the TV show. They were brand new stories that were being made. So, and I do know, like, somebody actually did bring up to me that Twilight Zone got the TV reboot, but they also were looking into, like, XM radio to do, like, Twilight Zone episodes, kind of like War of the Worlds. And so, but Twilight Zone is such a part of culture now that to not have it feels weird. I mean, for crying out loud, one of the best jokes I ever loved from Family Guy was when they referenced a Twilight Zone story. Do you know the one I'm thinking of, or?
I think so. It's just
the only brain cell in Peter's head and the glasses break. I love that story in Twilight Zone.
Well, yeah, it's just they've made so many different references to Twilight Zone on Family Guy alone.
Dude, Futurama, Simpsons, they've all referenced Twilight Zone. In fact, there are current series that still reference Twilight Zone. So at that point, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Like, as a kid, I wasn't because I got prevented from watching it. But I'm excited for this. I want to see especially what Ken Levine does with this project. Because I'm not gonna lie, with Bioshock, man, every twist, every turn that he did was excellently crafted. The only time I wouldn't say that case is Bioshock 2, but I'm not a fan of Bioshock 2. But Infinite and 1, he did it so well. This is a job right up his alley. I would dare say this is a job right up Shyamalama Ding Dong's alley, like 5 to 10 years ago. Like Unbreakable, Shyamalama Ding Dong. This would have been right up his alley. But now Ken Levine doing it, I love the idea. Alex, any thoughts on Ken Levine running an interactive Twilight Zone reboot?
Well, having never played Bioshock and
we need to fix that, my friend.
Not being very acquainted with Ken Levine, but I do love the Twilight Zone. I think it's a great series. I love going back to it, and certainly it's been attempted to be rebooted so many times over the last 60 years or so, but I don't know about the whole interactivity thing. I don't know how that's really going to work. Maybe just because it's not very clear about what kind of interactivity they're going for, other than might be choose your own adventure kind of route. But I don't see that going for TV. A point and click adventure, maybe, but I just don't know how this is working.
Adventure, I'd do it. That'd be awesome to me.
Yeah.
All I have to say to you, Alex, is, would you kindly get your butt over here so we can play some Bioshock?
Another time, I suppose. That's I gotta go to bed after this.
No, I'm sorry. I said, would you kindly? I'm gonna drop the joke. I can already see Romney just like, yeah, the joke's getting old.
I'm just stretching.
So, final thoughts before we move on?
No, I think we've said it.
Yeah, I'm just definitely excited how this goes about, because I know there was a web series called Black Mirror that was trying something similar. So
yeah, who
knows?
No, I've heard numerous different takes on trying to do Twilight Zone without it being called Twilight Zone, and frankly, I like the fact that we're getting the actual brand to it. So moving on to the next story here, okay. So we're reporting on this one, but it's one of those things where I didn't want to go back to Hunger Games, and I got brought back to Hunger Games. I can't remember who did it, which one of you yahoos actually did it. Probably Romney. But you guys brought me back to frickin' Hunger Games!
Where are you getting Hunger Games from?
Oh, because of the actress.
I'm totally getting that vibe. So a while back, we reported on the Power Rangers movie getting its most recent casting of Elizabeth Banks playing Rita Repulsa. The reason I'm getting a Hunger Games vibe, Alex, is because she is from Hunger Games.
Okay.
So creepy lady with all the excessive makeup.
Right.
That's Elizabeth Banks.
Right.
So at that point, she is playing Rita Repulsa, and we actually just got our first concept image, or not concept image, actual image of her in costume. For the role of Rita Repulsa, and it looks like something straight out of the Hunger Games movies, as far as I am concerned.
I'm a little more with Romney. It gives me more Diva Talks vibes, but
I would expand even further. It's giving me Poison Ivy vibes. Let me see if I can actually get an image here. What? I'm not wrong. She looks like frickin' Poison Ivy. She could probably do Poison Ivy better than Uma Thurman did. Especially in that look.
Come on, cursor. I got it.
Okay, bring it up really quick, and then and the first thing that comes up is all the old Rita. So this is the image that we have of Elizabeth Banks in costume for the sorceress Rita Repulsa. Obviously, it's got a very plant-like look to it, but I mean, it still looks menacing. It still looks like, she is a legit villain to be taken seriously. But I could kind of get where you guys are going to. Like, I could see the Diva Talks kind of vibe coming off of the costume. I believe it was Romney that actually presented this story. So your thoughts on the imagery? Is this the right direction for the Power Rangers movie to go, or do you think they need to kind of think this costume?
Well, given that, I mean, first of all, I knew that there would be a radically different design, since they are making it clear that this is a new reimagining of Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And with this outfit, I got pretty much the Diva Talks vibe. I see the menacing, but I don't really see the sorcerer part of the design to this. I mean, I can see maybe why they're going with kind of a green color because of the green power coin. I mean, I see villain, but I don't see evil sorceress with this outfit. I mean, maybe when I actually see it in motion and see it's actually...
Oh, I think Romney's kind of cutting out again.
Hey, this internet connection.
Hey, Laven. I would actually agree with you there. I think it doesn't have that mystical vibe just yet, and I think one of the main things is missing that would actually do this, which is the wand. We need to actually see her staff.
Yeah, and
I think that's the part that's missing from this to give it that mystical look.
yeah, not even just that, but I think a lot of it is just, and again, it was probably a costume test, so I'm going to withhold a majority of my judgment until I see a trailer, until I actually see how she carries herself as Rita.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really what's going to make or break this design here. Because I like that they make it look very intimidating, very, like, villainous. It's just, it's hard to really gauge from just a simple costume makeup test.
The other example that I can think of that a lot of people, like, went nuts over was the costume test for, I can't remember her name, but she's playing Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse.
Olivia Munn.
Olivia Munn, where she was already having costume tests, like the costume wasn't even completed yet, and they were doing costume tests just to make sure she had the look for it. And obviously that was a completely different kind of costume test. Like, they put those things up, I think, simply to see if she's going to fit the sex appeal of the character. And this is a completely different deal because this is basically trying to not only showcase the costume, but also the character or the actress in character. And yes, it does look menacing, and yes, it does look evil, but I agree with you. It's missing elements that would help with it. I do kind of agree with you, though. I love the emphasis on green, but that actually just sparks a question with me. Didn't they already say there, like, even in a sequel, there probably wouldn't be a Green Ranger?
I'm pretty sure they would at least tease it at the end of this one, because, I mean, as much as I have my own particular opinions about the character of Tommy Oliver, but when most people think of Power Rangers, they often think of the green with evil arc. And although they wouldn't do it in this first movie, that would be an obvious sequel hook where they would have like something either post credits or right before the credits where you would see the reveal of the Green Ranger in some capacity.
The other idea that actually just barely came to me, like, because if you look at the image, it's got a lot of green and some gold. I wonder if it's almost teasing, like the way that they would tease it is that the way she's getting her power is she is siphoning off of the green power coin.
Possibly.
That's something Andre Meadows kind of theorized himself, Andre the Black Nerd.
Yeah, because that actually kind of makes sense, like, that she would mirror the power that she's accumulating. And she's a villain, so at that point, like, you know, we've seen witches and wizards that have siphoned off of existing power sources to gain their power. The only thing that throws that off, in my opinion, is the eyes are blue. And at that point, they would probably need to be green, just to show that this is coursing through her body. But aside from that, I think it'll be... I'm still looking around for like a full body shot of her, and I don't think there is one. But I think this is at least a step in a right direction for it. Is it just going to be Rita, or did they say that we were going to get
It's just
Zed?
Rita.
Okay,
Yeah,
just Rita.
Yeah, just Rita. It would be too much too soon if they were trying to jump straight to Zed, because...
Here's hoping that it's not the screechy Rita Repulsa. I think that would get on people.
I doubt it's going to be... Yeah, well obviously Elizabeth Banks. It's not Barbara Goodson.
Well, I mean, it may not be the exact same as Barbara Goodson, but I can kind of see it. It just depends on kind of how hammy, I guess, they want to take it. Yeah. And so there's still a lot we don't know about what direction taking with the Power Rangers, and so until I see in motion, until I actually see how she carries herself as the character, and that's really what's going to make or break it for me.
Yeah, we actually do need to see like a trailer that showcases them in their roles. And granted, a trailer is not going to tell us a whole lot, but it'll at least give us a personification of them in that role. At that point, an image doesn't tell us much, but a moving image can tell us a little bit more of how they're approaching the role, especially with a villain, and dare I say, an outlandish villain or a bombastic villain like Rita Repulsa. So at that point, you actually do have to get that right. yeah, there really isn't a whole lot else to add on the Rita Repulsa costume. It does make me a little bit more excited for Elizabeth Banks playing the role, because she does look good in it. An idea that actually a friend just barely messaged to me is that she's got a very White Queen from Narnia kind of vibe, too. I could see that as well. But, it's a villain pose, so there's not really a whole lot we could do with this. And unfortunately, that's actually the stories that we have, but I've actually got another story lined up just in case this would actually happen. Wow, we're actually busting through stories really fast tonight. That's amazing for us. The next story that we actually do have has been advertised for a while now, and it's actually up on our Geek News thread. Alex found it tonight, which is that Robert Downey Jr. is actually confirmed not only... okay, so Robert Downey Jr. has a couple of things happening right now. First of all, there's a strong possibility he is actually not coming back for Iron Man 4. I'm not surprised by this because, frankly, he's been saying this for quite a while now. And, frankly, I don't mind the reboot. But he also just got confirmed to be joining the cast for Spider-Man Homecoming, which Alex actually found the story for. So I actually got to ask, Alex, you're kind of the one that I'm interested in the opinion here, especially since you didn't take very kindly to the introduction trailer for Spider-Man. Are you excited for Homecoming?
It's a Spider-Man movie, of course I am. It's just the costume I'm not digging all that much, but it's not a deal breaker for me, as I mentioned. I just mentioned to this you personally, privately, when we first talked about it. I'm not particularly a big fan of this new Spider-Man costume, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I'm not going to swear off the movie because I don't particularly care for the costume. It's just, But it's good. I'm glad to kind of see Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man come into this new Spider-Man movie.
Do you really quick want to just explain to people why you have a problem with the reveal?
It's just, it makes me ache. Sorry, Romney. We lost him.
Yeah, unfortunately, Romney's internet checked out. Sorry, guys. He'll be back in a minute.
It kind of makes me think more of an animated series like Spider-Man the Animated Series, or another superhero series like Batman the Animated Series, where the costume is kind of molded with them, like the eyes move with them. It's just a little strange for me to see that in a live-action format. Just because with live-action, I guess I expect a level of realism, which is a little ironic, I know, for a superhero movie.
So the CGI's really just kind of bugged you in the trailer. Okay.
I just almost prefer the stiff-looking suits of any of the previous incarnations, but whatever. I'll get used to it in time.
Yeah, you and me kind of talked about this personally. Like, I didn't mind it because in the comics, really the best way that Spider-Man could show any kind of emotion was through his eyes. They did that a lot in the comics. So at that point, I wasn't against it. I will admit it looked weird, but I wasn't entirely against the concept. Romney, you seem to be back, but I'm not sure.
You there, Romney?
That answers my question. Okay. So, real quick, are we excited, or are we pissed off that Robert Downey Jr. is going to show up in Spider-Man Homecoming? I think it makes sense because he introduces him in the trailer.
I'm excited. I mean, outside of the Avengers, really, we haven't had a lot of the other Marvel movies kind of cross with each other, which, at this point, I feel like they need to start doing a little more of. I mean, yes, we're getting Civil War now, but that's like the first out of this entire cinematic universe where we're finally seeing these heroes come together in a full sense, not just Easter egg, not just cameo, but actual coming together, being a part of the plot, just even if it's a minor role.
You mean like aside from Avengers?
Yes, aside from Avengers, I'm talking like any of the regular first main installment movies, right? Because all these movies, what have they been doing? They've been building up and building up and building up to the Avengers, and which is great. But if you haven't been keeping up with all of them, it's a little bit like, who are all these extra people? I think this is a way to kind of finally make the universe start to feel a little more connected outside of the Avengers sense.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that one. But
I mean, here's the other thing too, is that I actually think potentially this is the last Captain America movie. I really don't think we're going to get another other than that. I think Chris is going to come back for Avengers, obviously, but I don't think we have a Captain America 4 slated.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there will be, frankly. Nothing against Chris Evans. I just think eventually, we have to move on. That's why I'm not against Iron Man 4 if they do it. Robert's not a part of it. The only thing that I would actually dare say I'm against is there's been talk that Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts would take over as Iron Man. I'm against that concept, but that's more along the lines of I've never really liked the casting of Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. Just because I can think of a few other actresses, and actually Scarlett Johansson got added to that list, where she could play it better. In my opinion, she gets the role a little bit better. And I know a lot of people are going to send to me like, well, Iron Man 3 is the perfect example of why she should do it. I'm not on board with that just yet. I really do think there are other actresses they could have brought in to play Pepper. I'm not against Pepper in the Iron Man suit. I just don't like the actress pick, and I haven't since Iron Man 1. So I'm not against that concept. I'm going to bring that to you really quick. Robert Downey Jr. not coming back for Iron Man 4. Does that mean you're going to boycott it?
This is news to me. I thought he was coming back.
No, he's made it very clear he doesn't want to do any more Iron Man. In fact, he's made it pretty clear that in Avengers Infinity War, he will have a very minimal role. And it's not because I don't think he hates the character or the success that he's gotten from it. I just think, like with all other actors, he wants the next project.
Yeah, it's understandable. He's tired of it, and depends on who fills the shoes.
The guy's already started teasing things like Sherlock Holmes 3. Saying like, I want to get back into that instead of constantly playing Tony Stark for the rest of my life, which I can understand.
Yeah, it's reasonable to assume. Now, you did mention the next one that Iron Man's going to be a reboot.
That's one of the supposed scripts. However, with the whole Pepper concept, it would be a continuation.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't mind a continuation, even if it has to be with another actor. I'll have to see who ends up filling his shoes. It's going to be. Well, I know there's quite a few other actors even considered before Robert Downey Jr. And I'm sure some of which I thought, that would have worked if Downey Jr. wasn't there.
I brought up a couple of those casting options. I mean, for the longest time, Tom Cruise was being considered to play Tony Stark. Yeah. Another one that I knew of that was not being considered, but in a very minor way, was Michael Shanks. If people have watched Stargate SG-1, you know who Michael Shanks is. And he actually fits. He fits the Tony Stark role. I actually think a little bit more than Robert Downey Jr., although Robert came in and owned that role. I have no problem admitting that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've loved him for all this time in the role because I didn't know anything about Iron Man when I went and saw it. I just saw the trailers and saw, hey, that looks pretty cool. I want to go see that way back in 2008, and I loved that movie. And yeah, that was the movie that was the other movie that really introduced me to the world of Robert Downey Jr. because his career kind of faded after his real bad stint with drugs and everything else. But certainly, I'm not against the recasting the role because it's kind of refreshing. If it's going to be a continuation, that's refreshing for a change instead of just resetting again. I wouldn't mind a continuation. It'll be hard, but I'm sure someone will come along and fill the role just fine.
I don't think that'll be the issue. Him and Spider-Man Homecoming, I actually don't also have an issue either. Yeah. Because at this point, he's introducing him in the movie, in the trailer. So at that point, and it is Civil War, which in Civil War, the comic, Tony and Peter actually have a lot of interactions with each other. Yeah. So then at that point, it makes sense for him to be in Spider-Man Homecoming. Maybe even state, this is how Tony found him, kind of thing. So I'm not against this concept.
So I don't know. Is this a comic incarnation? Because I see like a lot of people who like to spitball potential ideas for Homecoming or any future Spider-Man is Peter Parker or whoever is an apprentice to Tony Stark. Is that ever like a comic thing? Is that just kind of a unique idea?
Not really. I mean, here's the thing. My knowledge of Spider-Man is actually kind of limited. There are stories I've never read. I do know the whole Iron Spider Prospect that they did a while back, but I believe that was just a collaboration with Tony and Peter, not necessarily that Tony was taking Peter under his wing. I do know the Iron Spider exists, but like there are certain storylines I just don't know. Obviously, I don't know Civil War. I've never read it. I only know tidbits here and there just from the research that I've had to do when Civil War got announced.
Right. Hey, seeing as we're still on the topic of Homecoming, I'm sure you've heard the rumor that, or at least one of the potential castings, Michael Keaton as a villain.
Yes, but here's the thing. Nobody, like, it's 50-50. People are saying, yeah, that'd be awesome. And then others are saying, no, this is not confirmed. And Michael is walking out of his butt kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I know.
I've seen the concept that Michael Keaton is being considered for the villain, and supposedly the villain is Vulture, which I think it would be great. Personally.
I'd love to. Michael Keaton as a villain would be great.
I actually think Michael Keaton as Vulture would be great.
I don't know much. Unfortunately, I don't know much about Vulture.
Think an executive that's obsessed with youth. That's who Vulture is. At least that's the way the animated series portrayed him. I know that there's different portrayals in the comics, but I mean, here's the thing too: is I was actually you can remember this. I was remotely excited when I saw the Vulture wings in Amazing Spider-Man 2 because I'm like, holy crap, a villain they haven't covered. But then I'm like, oh, Sinister Six, crap.
Right.
But I did like the fact that we were going to get Vulture finally. You know, we were actually going to start seeing some other villains other than the prominent ones like Doc Ock, like Venom. We were actually going to step into some of the more unknown villains. And Michael Keaton as Vulture actually fits to me. Although the one thing I actually kind of have to laugh at is a lot of Spider-Man's villains are executives at one point. It's almost like he's taking on corporate America. I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm excited for it, for Michael Keaton, whomever he plays. I think he could fit not most, but a good portion of the Spider-Man villains. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited overall for Spider-Man Homecoming just to see what they can do with it. Now, unfortunately, we're actually getting really close to wrap-up time, so I'm just going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. Unfortunately, Romney wasn't able to get back, but guys, it's like I can still hear rain outside my window. So at that point, I know that he's having some weather issues trying to get back on. But unfortunately, he's not able to do it. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap things up. Alex, if people want to get in contact with you and talk to you about the stories that we've been discussing, how do they do that?
Well, of course, you can find me at Twitter. At AlexJShort is my handle there. So tweet at me or just follow me and see what, because I always post when I have a new video and I always post when Geek News is going up. And you, of course, can find me here on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my primary channel. And as I've mentioned over the last course of several videos for the last several weeks, I have a backup channel that I had to dust off recently because of recent copyright strikes and problems called Shadow Blizzard 3000 X2. Now, let me kind of plug...
Which I make the joke of that you just get another Mega Man X sequel.
I'm a Mega Man X sequel. I love that. If I might actually pump out a couple projects that I did this week. I got a couple videos up this week. One on my main channel where I quickly talked about the little Star Fox anime short that came out to promote Star Fox Zero. Fun little short. I had fun watching it. Nintendo, make more anime. We really.
I have a feeling we'll be talking about that next week. I really want to bring in Aldo for that because I know he watched it and I know you watched it. Yeah. The only one I can't guarantee is Romney because Romney sometimes doesn't want to spoil himself. Right.
So the other project, which I had to go to my backup channel because it went over 15 minutes. Well, this week, you can see that the second volume of Shirobako came, which I'm very excited about because I thought this was such a great show. And very recently, there was talks that the producers were discussing the possibility of there being a second season. All discussion right now. So I just decided, hey, I'll throw up a quick video giving up what I'd like to see and if there actually will be a Shirobako season 2. So that's on my second channel, Shadow Blazer 3000 X2.
And I'm sure that as soon as the copyright strike is done, this stuff will move over to the actual channel.
Oh, yes.
The other thing I actually wanted to bring up with you is, since I know you're fan of this concept, or at least you're engaged in this concept. Did you see the video that Gaijin Goomba and Akitera put out? Is Moe killing anime? Did you watch that at all?
Oh yeah, I watched that.
Oh, you sound like you didn't like it.
I actually, well, mostly because I hear this every day. It's like, is Moe? And I already knew Gaijin Goomba's kind of thoughts beforehand without ever seeing the video, because he mentioned how much he dislikes the concept of Moe when he talked about the music video Me 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 Me. And so I was kind of like, oh great, Gaijin's gonna rant about Moe being the big evil.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you're kind of on the pro end of that argument.
Yeah, but I really liked what Aki had to say about it. I thought she came at it from a little less. I don't want to say Goomba was all like panicking. He makes some reasonable points. Goomba does make some reasonable points to what Moe might be kind of doing to the industry, but I think Aki came at it from a slightly more optimistic view, and I can appreciate her for that.
Yeah, no, I actually liked the video because I thought it was fairly balanced in the regard. Like they had Gaijin come in early on, like in the first half of the video, give his viewpoint on the matter. I thought he was very tasteful with how he did it, and then I like the fact that Aki kind of rounded it up and saying her viewpoint of she didn't think that. I that's why I brought it up with you, is because I thought it was a fairly balanced video, considering this is kind of a hot topic with anime right now.
Oh yeah.
So at that point, those are the ways that you guys can reach them. If you guys want to get a hold of Romney, I'm probably going to murder this, but I'm only going to bring up his YouTube channel because I can't keep track of everything else off the top of my head. If you guys want to see all of the content that Romney provides, you can go to his YouTube channel, which is Studio Ghost Utah. He also has an @Romney's Review Twitter, where you can contact him directly. And some of the most recent work that he actually has under his belt, he just barely did a review with YouTube channel. What's the word I'm looking for? YouTube content producer Retneck, where they reviewed the Snow White and the Huntsman sequel. But the one thing that I kind of want to pin here, and it's on my channel actually, but they did the work here, is like we said earlier, Romney was able to get into a private screening for Ratchet and Clank, and he was able to bring Aldo and Brinton with him, along with Retneck, so aka Matt Billingsley. And they actually got together for about 30 minutes and talked about their review of Ratchet and Clank. And that is up on the video. It's a bonus episode for Geek News Reviews and Opinions a bonus episode of group reviews for Ratchet and Clank. So I'm going to bring that up. And if people want to get a hold of me, and I kind of hope you don't, because I've had enough with people trying to get a hold of me this week. If you want to do so, however, there are two ways to do it. One is through my channel, which is youtube.com/Drac2326. That's where you're watching this live feed from. And also my Twitter, which is under the exact same name. It's actually up in my lower third here. You can contact me and leave questions on what I thought about the stories, maybe even expand on other thoughts that maybe I haven't had on, say, Rita Repulsa or on Spider-Man Homecoming. I love to hear you guys' feedback. Just check your hatred at the door. I would just ask that simple concept. Please check your hatred at the door.
Once again, don't be a dick.
Please, thank you, Alex. Now for the show directly, if you guys want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 4 ways to do it. I'm going to get the 2 easiest ones out of the way first, which is social networking. You can follow the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast on Facebook. If you look us up directly and like it, and you'll get up to the minute information when we go live, all the stories that we might be covering, and also the polls and other the polls that we might be covering for the stories. Also, I've made it a habit now to put up the videos of the other content producers. So right now you have tons of other ways to get access to their content. The other is Twitter, which is @GeekyNRO, and it does the exact same thing. The other way is also through our email address, which is geekyweek@gmail.com. And you can leave suggestions for stories, things you maybe want us to talk about. Like I said earlier, the suggestion for China, aka Joni Laurer, was actually a listener suggestion, and I'm glad they told me about it, because that's one of those ones I would like to know, because that's another awesome woman paving the way, at least in the career that she was in. And you can leave the stories there. You can also leave your feedback on stories that we did cover. We'd love to hear you guys' feedback, as well as your suggestions for stories and other things that you'd like to see us do. And then the other way to get a hold of us is through Podomatic. Yes, you can now get our podcast through Podomatic.com. It is geekyweek.podomatic.com. You can sign up there, or Podomatic actually provides a little button to subscribe to iTunes where you can get a feed for all the most recent episodes that we have out there right now. And the archive is pretty much complete for 2016, including the bonus episode of Ratchet and Clank today. It is up on Podomatic as well. So you guys can get a hold of that there. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get Romney back, but I'm sure he'll be back next week. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So for me and for Alex, we'll see you guys next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.
Are we sure this just didn't turn into Dragon Shadow podcast?